Back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. We are live on YouTube. If you'd like to join us there at our YouTube channel, just type in Buckeye Talk on YouTube, and you can find us. Ohio State beating Texas 14-7 to open up the season, number 1 versus number 3. I think we're all assuming that Ohio State will probably take over that number 1 spot next week. Penn State's playing Nevada. So they're playing the type of game where they should be winning the game. Here's how I want to do this, because typically when we just record this, we can do ad breaks. You can't really do ad breaks when you're live. At least we can't, because we don't have live ads yet. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to split this up into 3 different parts that we're going to do in the next 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to talk quarterback play. We're going to talk the offense as a whole, and we're going to talk about the defense as a whole and the job that Matt Patricia and Brian Hartline did as first-time coordinators at Ohio State. Let's start with Julian Sayin. Stefan, 13 of 20, 126 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 runs for 2 yards. I guess evaluate him based off the expectations for what you thought week 1, given the opponent, given the environment, given the atmosphere, given his experience, where you thought he would be and how close he was to meeting that expectation for week 1.
I was overall pretty impressed with the way that Julian Sayin performed in this game. Now, I know the box score might not tell a great story, and sure, there were highs and lows in the way Ohio State's offense played and specifically the way Julian Sayin played. But I think from, listening to the way Ryan Day talked about the game afterward, it's pretty clear Ohio State had a certain approach that they wanted, especially as you kind of saw how this game was going along, right? Like you get into late second quarter, early in the second half, it was pretty clear that this was going to be a low-scoring game, a game that was won on the defensive side of the ball. And the key is to not make mistakes, right? Like don't put your defense in a bad spot. And I think that's what Ohio State did a good job of. There was times, I remember us, like there was a possession, I'm trying to think if it was second quarter, maybe third quarter, maybe you guys remember, where Ohio State was kind of pinned up against their goal line and they maybe got a first down or 2 and they punted. And the 3 of us and Jimmy Watkins, our columnists, were kind of sitting there like, okay, that was actually not that bad, right? You got away from the goal line, you punted, and you were able to at least, flip the field a bit. And it was just clear that that's how Ohio State wanted to approach this. And they played Julian in a way where it was like, as long as you don't make mistakes for us, we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. And for Arch Manning, it was the opposite. He had a pick. Texas failed to convert on, I think, 3 or 4 fourth downs. Like, that where Ohio State wasn't turning the ball over, wasn't making the mistakes, Ohio State was clean. Ohio State was doing the right things. Texas was the team making the mistakes. So I when we graded Julian Sayin on our videos on our YouTube page that you can see later, I gave him a B. I thought it was good, man. Like the throw to Carnell, I thought was a good throw. I know, the catch was so impressive. I think your natural reaction is, damn, Ohio State still got some pretty good receivers and I'm going to make some plays. But I still think Julian Sayin put that ball in a good spot. I thought the throw to Brandon Inniss was put in a good spot and just an awesome play by a defender. There were some drops. So overall, I thought Julian Sayin played pretty well and did what Ohio State just asked him to do. Like that's what he needed to be. I was actually listening to the radio on the drive back from the game. I was from the stadium. I was listening to 97.1, and they were talking about Julian Sayin being like a game manager. And I think that's often a bad connotation, but it's his first career start against the number 1 team in the country. Like, to some extent, he has to be a game manager because that's how Ryan Day talked about this game. Get through week 1. Just be 1-0, and then the season can kind of start, right? Because you can kind of view Grambling, Ohio State bye week as like this 3-game preseason now where we learn a lot about this team, we figure out who they are, and then it's full go when the Big Ten season starts. So I thought Julian Sayin played well. I thought he did what Ohio State needed him to do. And I got distracted. Sorry, someone commented that they just realized I was blonde. Okay. Thank you. welcome to the live Buckeye Talk, where people get to see our faces more often. Another comment we just got about Arvel Reese. Oh, we'll get to Arvel.
We'll get to Arvel.
We'll focus on Julian Sayin right now. I thought he did what Ohio State needed him to do, and overall I'm impressed. And I'm really excited to see against Grambling and Ohio. What's going to happen is he's going to have good numbers against Grambling and Ohio. And the national reaction is going to be like, oh, he struggled against a good team, and now he's just stat padding against bad teams. Like, no, I'm actually kind of excited to see Julian Sayin full go, not being asked to be a game manager. Like, now let's see him let it rip and see what that looks like. Because I think these next couple weeks are going to tell us a lot about Julian Sayin, even in games where Ohio State's, obviously going to be favored by a lot to win.
What'd you think, Andrew? Week 1, Julian said he didn't light the world on fire,
right?
But he also didn't burn his team down to the ground the way the other guy did, maybe.
Yeah, that's an interesting connotation. I think we can probably get into Julian versus Arch next.
I would love to have a Julian Arch conversation.
I think we could do that next, but I just think like when you just kind of narrow your focus to Julian, he did what was asked of him, right? To put it, if you were like a teacher or whatever, and you're grading a student, you know what you would say? Like, meeting expectations. Turns in his homework. He did all the things right. He gets A's and B's on quizzes. He blah, blah, blah. He does this. He does that. Participation is 100%. Everything was there that you were looking to see, but he didn't go above and beyond, but that's not his fault. Like Ryan Day multiple times at the press conference, I thought it was very, very interesting when Ryan Day was talking, when he was saying, I had to figure out what kind of game this was going to be. He said, I've been thinking for 3 months about what type of football game this was going to be, and I didn't know, and I wanted to feel this out. One of our commenters just said, Ryan Day said just win the game, and I think they would have been happy to win this game 3-0, and they would have been happy to win this game 52-49, and then you come up for air and you figure out what in the world you do. So, for me, for Julian, it was like they came into a plan and they probably went, all right, one of our commenters just said, don't crash the Lambo. Steven, you mentioned, I think it was a Ferrari. We're just comparing Julian Sayin and leading the offense to just like driving a lot of sports cars. Like, whatever it was.
It's not a minivan.
No, it's not a minivan. It's not a pickup truck. It is absolutely a speed car. But it's one of those things where Ryan Day and the offensive staff put a game plan together thinking that the driver of the car could hit a max speed of 80. And in reality, you could probably hit like 120 with this kid. And I think that's probably where you're where you're at with Julian. So, he did what was asked of him. He did everything he had to do. He didn't make mistakes. He was on the money when he had to be. They did only score 14 points, but I think Ohio State's totally okay with that. And I think you're going to start to see him get more and more and more and more over these next couple of weeks.
So Zach in the chat just said he won the game. Steven, what else do you want? That's the point. I don't want anything else from him this week. That's all. I wrote that this week. That's all he had to do this week was win the game. It didn't matter what it would look like. Don't make mistakes. Make the plays when the opportunity is there to make it. Keep the team on schedule and be calm and poised. And he checked all of those boxes in a world where the guy on the other side of the field didn't do those. And we're going to have an Arch Manning conversation. That's what I want this to evolve into. We did videos about Julian Sayin. I gave him an A. They gave him a B and a B+. I think that's solid. I think his job, for what his job was to be this week, he passed that. And do I want to see that grow over the next couple of weeks before they get in the Big Ten play? Of course I do. But it's the number one team in the country, and this dude played 27 snaps and threw 12 passes last year. There was no expectation from me that's like, hey, can you come be Justin Fields against Clemson or CJ against Georgia or Will in the CFP? That's not how this is supposed to go. It was supposed to go like this. It was supposed to look like Ohio State didn't ask its first-year starting quarterback to save them the way they asked their first-year starting quarterback in 2021 to save them. And we'll get into that more when we talk about the rest of the offense as a whole, because I do think some of the stuff Ryan Day was saying after the game was very enlightening on why they approached it this way, but also what they learned about Julian Sayin in this game. But Arch Manning on the other side, it's
can
not.
Can I say one more thing about?
No, go
can
ahead.
I say one more thing about Julian? I just wanted to also say, because I wrote about this post game and I talked to the texters a bit about it. 614-350-3315, just about like we were part of that group too. And a lot of Ohio State beat writers were that it was like every time Julian Sayin was in front of a microphone, it was, how have you grown as a vocal leader? How have you been a leader? Because we saw how much that leadership trait mattered when Will Howard was here, right? Mm-hmm. And how much Ryan Day wanted a quarterback this offseason in the competition to command the huddle and do this and do that and be the leader. And it's like, I think we were like all thinking, when is this rah-rah vocal side going to come out of Julian? And I think we kind of saw today that it doesn't have to. Like his demeanor is, his high school coach, when I talked to him for a story, like talked to him as like ice in the veins, super calm, super even keel. Like that's what Julian is. So that's what he was today. Like, think about some of the low moments for Ohio State's offense. Julian Sayin walks out the field, is like, all right, on to the next one. He threw that touchdown to Carnell. Everyone's jumping. They're like slapping each other on the helmet, all this and that. And Julian like high fives a few of his teammates and is just like walking back to the sideline and like daps up Brian Day. And like, that's it. Like, he's so even keel. Like, you couldn't get in his head. And that's exactly what they needed today, because that's a first time starter against the number one team in the country. And if you were at the stadium or if you were watching at home, there was all the pageantry. I mean, the flyover was crazy. The Lee Corso, the stadium was rocking, the banner, like so much is going on. And you're about to play the number one team in the country. And this kid's out there like, yeah, I'm from California. Like, cool. I'm chill. Like, it's fine. I'm going to make some throws. I'm going to miss some throws. We're going to win this game and then we'll move on. It's like, he's not the rah-rah guy that Will Howard is. Like the clip after the scoop and score last year where Will Howard's like punching Jack Sawyer and going crazy. Like, that's just not going to be Julian. It doesn't mean that he can't be really successful and can't have the respect of his teammates. It's clear that they respect him.
I've covered 3 Michigan games in Ohio Stadium, 2018, 2022, 2024. I've covered a ranked Indiana team. I covered the Notre Dame game in 2022, the Michigan State game in 2021, Oregon game in 2021. I think the only time I've heard the stadium more electric and louder than what it was today against Texas was probably the 2018 Michigan game, when Ryan Day was taking advantage of the fact that Don Brown only wanted to play man coverage. Okay, I don't know if there has been a more electric game. To the Will Howard point, I got to find it again in the chat. Zero Factor said this, and I do think this is a good point. And it's, I think, going to kind of validate Andrew's thoughts last year and how he would grade Will Howard. Last year, we had to accept that Will Howard was going to make a mistake every game. Julian was calm, even being blitzed by that great defense. He made good decisions, calm and smooth as fast. I think that's fair, because Will Howard did make the mistakes, which is ironic enough because he was 25 years old playing quarterback. He wasn't 25, but he's been around for 5 years, and Julian Sayin's been around for 18 months. I think Will might have thrown a pick today, just given what the resume would have said. And so the fact that Julian, with 27 snaps under his belt, I don't know if I ever felt like he looked like a first-year starting quarterback in terms of his demeanor and how he conducted himself. Now, the way they used him, I think he looked like a first-year starting quarterback in terms of not putting the game on his shoulders, but also giving him the opportunity to make a play when the moment called for him to make a play. But I do think that's a promising thing, that Julian, the moment didn't look too big for him. And there's a lot of moments coming up on the schedule. I think that Washington game on the road might be a moment. Illinois on the road might be a moment. Penn State's obviously going to be a moment. I mean, he's got to go to Ann Arbor for his first trip as a starting quarterback in this rivalry game, and he's got the weight of 4 straight losses on his shoulders. Those are all moments, and it's easy to say, hey, the guy who's been a starter for the better part of a lot of the last 4 years of his career can handle those moments. That just comes with experience. But first-year starting quarterbacks, I don't know if you can always say it's fair to give them that opportunity. Arch Manning, 17 of 30, 170 yards, a TD and an interception. Should have had 2 interceptions, but they called it back. He also had 10 carries for 38 yards. He got sacked a couple of times. Andrew, how much of what we saw, and this is transitioning us into the defensive side of things, how much of what we saw from Arch today is everybody needs to cool it on Arch? I understand he's a Manning who plays for Texas, but everybody cool it and let that dude figure it out, versus Matt Patricia might be the right guy for this job, and Ohio State's got some dudes on defense.
I think it's more that one, the more the Patricia one than like Arch just stinks. And that's, I'm not trying to say that is disrespectful to anybody. Like, I think Matt Patricia and Ohio State came out with a very, very clear game plan of, when you talk about what they wanted to do, I think it was very clear that Ohio State came out. I mean, Ryan Day said, we didn't want to beat ourselves. We didn't want to have, self-inflicted errors. It's week 1. When you're playing Kent State, Akron, Ohio, Grambling, Ball State, whoever, you can make some mistakes and cover a 35.5 point spread. Like, you can figure it out. And, if you bet on the Buckeyes, you can still be happy. It'll be fine. Today, I think they kind of recognized, like, this is a 1 or 2 play game. And, one of the things that I thought was very, very interesting, and I wrote about this after the game, like, this was my instant kind of takeaway, was that Matt Patricia came from the NFL. And in the NFL, if you were an NFL football fan watching this, what have you heard about for years? 2 high safeties. Keep everything in front of you. Let your players make plays. Don't get beat. There's a reason why, when you look at, the playoffs at the end of the year, the teams that make the quarterbacks, and a lot of times there's a wild card teams that are like not really that good, but guess where they're at in the turnover differential? Very high. And that's the way Ohio State played today. They played with an NFL style scheme that was, we got Arvel Reese, we're gonna let him cook, we're gonna let him go. We've got Jermaine Matthews and Davidson Igbinosun, go get him. Caleb Downs, we're going to send him every once in a while. He had a great play. He didn't make the tackle. I forget when this was. He didn't make the tackle, but he dove in the backfield, and the running back for Texas, I think this one was Baxter. Baxter had to sidestep it, and he just disrupted the play. Matt Patricia, I think, I said this on our video. I said this on our podcast. I was not all that high on Matt Patricia when they hired him. I was not all that high on Matt Patricia as of 24 hours ago. I think you have to feel better. Matt Patricia had a great game plan. And frankly, you have to credit him, and you have to credit the players as well. The players made the plays, right? Matt Patricia didn't make Jermaine Matthews look like he got shot out of a cannon to come deflect that pass that, Sonny Styles nearly had. I mean, he was just putting the guys in the right position, and the guys were making plays. So I was very impressed from what I saw from the coaching standpoint for Ohio State's defense, from the player standpoint of Ohio State's defense. I think Arch Manning, there was that throw at the end of the game. I forget if it was when they were down 14-0 or 14-7, and they got the ball back, and we were like, holy smokes, that's a great throw. You see the flashes of Arch Manning, and I just think Matt Patricia and that Ohio State defense had him seeing ghosts out there, and that's a very, very impressive thing to do, because I do think Arch Manning is going to be pretty good. Ryan Day said as much after the game, and Ohio State's defense just absolutely balled out.
I think we've reached the Arvel Reese segment of the show, potentially.
All right. Well, if you can do Arvel, I'll do Davison. Everybody just ISO, go to the corner, let the point guard take it to the rack and go.
Hold on 1 second. I think it's hilarious, right? Arch Manning is like the money name right now. And I teed it up for everybody to talk about Arch Manning, and Stefan goes, yeah, but Arvel Reese.
We started this live, and within 2 seconds, we had comments about Arvel Reese and Davidson Igbinosun. So people are listening to Buckeye Talk, and they know where Gillis and I stand on certain things. Here's the thing on Arch. I think Arch is going to be fine. I picked him to win the Heisman this year. I think that's still very much on the table. I think Arch is going to be fine. The Texas offense is going to be good. They'll be fine. I expected this to be not this low scoring of a game, but I thought there was going to be some struggles. Texas moved the ball well, and they're going to convert some of those 4th downs against better teams, and they'll be all right. I'm not too worried about that. But I do – the Arch conversation I want to have is he was the name with all the hype coming into this game, and we knew that, right? He's a Manning. It's whatever. And he's a quarterback, and he's at Texas and all that. But we kept saying on Buckeye Talk, I kept saying on Buckeye Talk, we're going to walk away, and people are going to be like, hey, what? Did you see that Arvel Reese dude on Ohio State? Where did he come from? Who is that guy? And this ties into the Matt Patricia thing of just Matt Patricia utilized him perfectly. There's a clip going on Twitter right now. So if you're watching live, you can go find it. It's from Dane Brugler. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Mark Pantoni retweeted it. That's why it came up on my feed. So if you follow Pantoni, you'll see it. It's Arvel Reese going up against a 310-pound offensive lineman and literally just like being like, okay, you're here. I'm going to move you to the right because I want to go get your quarterback. Like, he was all over the place, destroying the Texas offensive line early in the game. I thought he changed that whole first half, and I thought Arvel Reese kind of set the tone for like what Ohio State's defense was about to do to Texas, and specifically that Texas offensive line in a game where I didn't particularly feel moved by how Ohio State's defensive ends played. Arvel Reese and Sonny Styles to some extent too just wrecked the game. And Arch Manning spent a lot of time thinking about Arvel Reese. So we like Matt Patricia just utilizing him in so many ways, and he's like, you see him drop back in coverage, and then he's like spying Arch Manning, and then he's coming in and going after the quarterback, and he on that first fourth down that Texas didn't get, he was the one who came in and stuffed the play. Caden Curry did a good job of like basically like bulldozing the line, and then Arvel just came straight to the middle unblocked and stuffed it to get a turnover on downs. He had the play later that was that also a fourth down that he went and got after Arch Manning.
I think it was, yes.
And I think it ended up, it might have actually later ended up being called a sack. At the time it wasn't, because it looked like maybe Arch had gained a yard. I think they ended up labeling it a sack. But there was just so many different ways. And then it's like fourth quarter, Kenyatta Jackson's hurt. He comes out of the game. He's not allowed to come back in. Okay, Arvel Reese hand on the ground playing defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
Like Patricia's just using him in so many different ways. And great comment from Sawyer. Yeah, me and Arch spent all day just thinking about Arvel Reese. Thankfully, I didn't have to like run away from him throughout the game. Like that is a blessing to not have to do that. But like Arvel is probably just kind of a sample of Matt Patricia's doing a lot of things that irritated you as an Ohio State fan watching Jim Knowles. And Ohio State's defense was great with Jim Knowles. And Jim Knowles is a great defensive coordinator who I think is going to have success against Penn State or with Penn State this season. I think he's a great defensive coordinator. But it was his scheme that was so good. And it's guys like CJ Hicks and Arvel Reese, and you're just like, you could use them in such different ways and use them better. And it's like you're watching that Oregon game, you're like, why are Sonny and Cody, like, what is going on? And they start using them in different ways, and they had some success. And now it's like CJ Hicks today I thought was outstanding. And CJ Hicks isn't going to be this 15-sack guy who's like changing how you view defensive ends and linebackers and things of that nature, but he can be really good in his role. And at the end of the game, he makes a play that, you know, in my head it was a sack. Arch, I know, got rid of it and whatever, but it's like CJ Hicks blew up that play. And Bo Atkinson is playing on the inside, and Arvel Reese has his hand on the ground, and you're just like, man, like Caleb bounces all over the field. Like Matt Patricia is utilizing these players in a way where you're like, yes, like we were telling you this last year. You had a really good front four, so you were able to kind of mask some things and use guys that fit really well in that Jim Knowles scheme. Seeing the personnel this year, I'm kind of like sitting here being like, is it a blessing in disguise that Jim Knowles isn't? Because like, would this defense in his scheme right now have been able to do what Matt Patricia and this defense did? I don't know.
I'm going to say yes and no. Because to be fair, Jim Knowles ran a lot of 3-down fronts with the jack roll when he was at Oklahoma State. So I don't want to go as far as, oh, he was stuck with the 4-down front. He got here in 2022. He tried the jack roll. It's just, I've been thinking about this on my drive home about Larry Johnson and how he was talking in the spring when we were asking him, hey, Larry, you're still here. You didn't retire. And he's like, yeah, I never said I was going to retire. You guys keep saying that every year. You're like, yeah, you're right. We do keep putting that on you, but it's because you're 70 years old, dude. 70-year-olds don't work. Okay, they go sit on a beach and golf. Okay, that's what they do. And he was talking about how I'm down for anything. We just have to put our players in the right position. We have to do things that make sense. We did not have the players to run a scheme like this. And he's right. Jack Sawyer isn't the type of athlete that CJ Hicks or Arvel Reese is. JT, he's a little closer, but they're still traditional edge-setting defensive ends. Tyleik Williams and Ty Hill, that's a little different, right? With defensive tackles. I mean, defensive tackle is defensive tackle. Just there, you're going to have one or two on the field depending on your front. It is different this year. If you are going to go out there and you're going to ask CJ Hicks and Arvel Reese, and even Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry to an extent, hey, can you go out there and just set the edge? That doesn't maximize them. Kenyatta is the closest thing in terms of being a defensive end whose job is to just set the edge. that they have from a body type standpoint. Because as you're right, Bo Jackson's not Bo Jackson. He's on offense and he also plays baseball and football. Bo Atkinson is their answer to the defensive tackle depth. On third down, they're just going to move him inside, take one of the defensive tackles off, leave Edric Houston out there, and pull either Arvel Reese down or play Kenyatta and Caden or play Kenyatta and CJ Hicks or whatever combination of those guys off the edge. And I think sometimes it's going to be sunny this year, and that's what they're going to do. So I guess we could talk about stopping the run at some point. I don't think this is the pod to do that in totality, but my biggest takeaway is this personnel fits that concept of what we thought Jim Knowles could do more than they've had the last 3 years. But also, Stefan is not wrong. Jim Knowles runs a certain scheme, and he fits the personnel to that specific scheme. Matt Patricia has spent essentially his entire coaching career in the NFL outside of the years at Syracuse, where he's used to having NFL players. Jim Knowles wasn't used to having NFL players when he got here. So Matt Patricia understands how to evolve as your personnel evolves, right? Okay, your personnel doesn't say you should run a traditional 4-2-5 every single snap. Your personnel says, yeah, you can run a 4-2-5 on early downs, but you're also going to have to run some 3-down fronts. You're going to have to run some 3-3-5s. You're going to have to look at some dime looks, which Devin Sanchez, by the way, we'll get to that when we start talking about Davidson Nick Minosin, because we can use him to let Andrew have his day, but also talk about the secondary. But this scheme fits these players better, where this scheme is more about, this is what you're good at. How about you go do that? For CJ Hicks, it's going to be 15 to 20 snaps. Just go do that. And if he has 8 sacks because of that, fine. If he has 4 sacks, fine. But everybody did things that it felt like, yeah, that's what your skill set says you should do. Arvel Reese, you're a linebacker. But every so often, we're going to have you spy Arch Manning. We're going to send you on a blitz up the middle and see if we can knock Arch off his spot. But I loved what I saw from Matt Patricia today because it fit the scheme, and Texas only scored 7 points. Andrew, you can respond to all of that, and then you can take us into Iggy talk.
Also, quick update on someone asked about Kenyatta Jackson.
Yeah.
Ryan Day said that it's not a long-term concern. Ryan Day said he wasn't sure if he's allowed to specify. I think it was a concussion.
He's got a head injury. He literally said, "Well, they took his helmet away, and they don't take your helmet away because you have a sprained ankle."
I'll get to that in a minute. The big point, which is obviously my time to shine, but to Steven's point, I don't think it's necessarily Matt Patricia showed up here and went, let me see with what I got. I'm going to do this particular scheme because whatever, I'm going to be multiple. Hey, we've got a 3-down lineman front. I'm going to run that. I'm going to run that. Like, I think that played a part in it, but I think it was, when you look at it, one of the things that Matt Patricia, I think, knows is that in the NFL, and why I keep bringing up the NFL is in the NFL, you can't beat yourself, because in the NFL, you could be 8-0 playing a 1-7 team and you might lose. And in college, that's a disaster. In the NFL, that's just a pretty decent upset, but it's nothing to, ruin a season over. In college, it is. And I think because the talent level is so even, Matt has this idea, and Matt Patricia has this concept of, if we don't beat ourselves, we're going to be fine. And then because you look at the talent that Ohio State has, I don't know, bare minimum, top 5 secondary in the sport. Linebacking core, from what we saw today, top.
That's the best linebacking. That's the best linebacking core in the country.
Yeah, I think the defensive tackle tandem, I've said all offseason, I think is the best in the Big Ten. I think Stefan is right. I think if you had to pick nits with one thing about today, it was I didn't see a ton of flash from Bo Atkinson, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson.
Really? I don't know that.
I didn't see the flash that I would want.
Well, I mean, Caden Curry, the first play of the game, on
Sure.
Arch's
Yeah.
whatever type of throw. You don't know who was in his face.
Yeah, Caden got in his
Caden
face.
Curry.
Arch
I don't.
decided to skip a rock.
I just don't. I don't think their job is to be the flash guys. And if they flash, obviously. But I think the linebackers are the stars of this team this year. I think they are where like the negative plays are going to come from more often than not on the edge, and then as traditional linebackers. So if I'm viewing it through that lens, it's like, oh, did Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson flash? I don't know, but they did their jobs.
Sure. Yeah, I think the one thing though that I would say is that you want one of those guys to develop into somebody who's, hey, we trust this guy against anybody in the country or most people in the country to win one-on-one. I think Sawyer's right. Like I think they did interrupt things maybe more than they impacted the stat sheet. I think they definitely were just kind of in the airspace of Manning more than they were like right up at his chin.
Sure.
So I think that's a fair point. But like to the Davison point, like it just goes to the secondary. Like I tweeted this out actually while we were on the podcast. I said Ohio State's defensive stat sheet or whatever brought to you by Buckeye Talk, because the leading tackler of the game was Davison Igbinosun for Ohio State. He had 10 tackles and 1 pass defense. And the second leading tackler of the game was Arvel Reese, who had 9 tackles and 1 sack. I do think that this was a very, very good performance from the guys that you needed to see it from. And frankly, Arvel and Davison were 2 of those guys for 2 very different reasons. Like Arvel we had talked about this idea of this like incredible Hulk looking person who was going to go play linebacker, but now we wanted him to play in a full-time role where we had seen flashes, and now he needed to step into a role. And he did that, and he was awesome. And Davison was, we've seen upside. We've also seen a lot of downside. We've also seen a lot of, kind of negative, we've also seen a lot of like negative stuff with Davison where it's every game. What do you have? They played 16 games last year, had 16 penalties. I don't know if he had, won a game literally, but like Davison looked the part of a high-end elite corner. So did Jermaine Matthews. Like there were players today that had various levels of questions to them, and Jermaine Matthews, it was fine. It was literally going into that. And one of our commenters said, "Are we going to talk about Jermaine Matthews?" Like Jermaine Matthews was awesome. Like I said, he got shot out of a cannon earlier when he made that pass deflection that Sonny almost picked off. Like the dudes that you needed to see, Davison's in that mix. Arvel is in that mix. I thought Jermaine was in that mix. We knew Caleb was awesome. Like no disrespect to Caleb, but like Caleb's greatness has just kind of become mundane in some ways where we're like, how awesome is this guy? Like you saw a lot of flashes from dudes that you either had questions about or needed to take that next step.
Okay, I'm going to start with Jermaine Matthews because I think he made himself a lot of money today. A lot. He's been their best cover corner even last year, and this was just a matter of time before he was going to get to show it in a big way, significantly, consistently. But I don't think it was a good idea throwing on Jermaine Matthews today. And I'm wondering, back in 2019, Jeff Okudah's stats weren't insane. He only had 3 picks. And part of the reason why is because teams stopped throwing at him. And I am wondering if we get to a spot with Jermaine where teams stop throwing at him. He was in perfect position to get that interception. Jimmy Watkins, our rivalry reporter and columnist, we were talking about it as it happened. And we said, if Arch throws that with a level of anticipation and just throws a stronger throw, maybe it's not picked. Maybe it's a pass breakup, or at worst, it's a catch and then it's a tackle right there. But Jermaine is on that boy like glue, and all he has to do is literally turn his head, and it's an interception. And I feel like since I got on the beat, we've been having constant conversations about, will the corners turn their heads and look for the ball? Well, Seven just answered that question. Yes, because even on the touchdown he gave up, I think he turned and looked for the ball. He just lost his footing. And so it ends up being a touchdown. He's got another play where They called it back, so it wasn't an interception. But still, Jermaine makes a play on the ball that ends up in an interception, at least in that moment. Jermaine earned himself some money tonight. And then Devin Sanchez, Stefan, we had gotten to a point here, and it's not because of anything Devin Sanchez was doing wrong. It's just the magnitude of the game. How many true freshmen do you want to throw out there if you don't have to throw them out there? Well, Nate Roberts played a snap at fullback on offense on the touchdown run by C.J. Donaldson, which I think we'll get into that when we get to the offensive side of things. Devin Sanchez had a real role. They spent a lot of time and dime, and what they were doing is Davis and Igbinosun goes inside, Jermaine stays outside. Devin replaces Davis and Igbinosun as the boundary corner, and then your safeties stay how they are with Jalen McClain, Caleb Downs, and Lorenzo Styles, which I'm interested to see what the snap counts are going to be for McClain, Styles, and Hartford. And if they rotated those guys or just one guy just didn't play at all. But I don't blame Devin for giving up the deep ball he gave up. That's Arch just being a really good quarterback and putting it where literally only his receiver could go. But, Devin looked good, man. He looked pretty good.
I thought Devin looked awesome, and I feel bad that, maybe the one play he's remembered for is, the best play of Arch had in the game. Because otherwise, Devin was so good that you maybe didn't even notice he was on the field because that's how good he was playing. When Devin got on the field, I looked over at Steven, I was like, Devin Sanchez was on the field for that play because it was what was it, a 3rd and 11? I think Arch kind of had a check down and they ended up punting, or I think that's what the situation ended up being. I was like, I think Devin's on the field, and you're like, no, that was Lorenzo. I was like, no. I see Lorenzo, and I see Caleb, and I see Davison, and I see Jermaine.
I'm got a white T-shirt out there.
I'm like, by the way, hilarious. What we've become is we're looking at the field while in the press box, and I'm like, no, the guy at the top of your screen, and I'm like, okay, first of all, literally here, I'm not watching on TV, but I'm like, the guy at the top of your screen, that's number 6, that's number 6, and he's like, yeah, I think you're right. He's like, that's Devin Sanchez. I said, yeah, I think he changed his number from 4 to 6, right? And we're like, yeah, we're like, holy crap, Devin Sanchez is in the game, and he played a lot. Yeah, I'm very curious to see the snap counts. We got a comment too asking about Philip Daniels and Ethan Owinyawa. Very excited to see what the snap counts are there because I thought they both. Or sorry, I think Philip Daniels I don't think came off the field at right tackle. I think Owinyawa and Tego rotated a bit at right guard. So we'll see what the snap counts were there. But I thought the right side of the offensive line looked good. We can get to that when we talk about the offense. But yeah, Devin Sanchez has a role on this team because if they trust him in some dime snaps against Texas, that guy's going to get some legit snaps against Washington and Penn State and Michigan and whatever the playoff holds. That he looked good. He looked ready. And I think Ohio State did the perfect they tried to simmer the JJ thing as best as they could last year. Remember Ryan Day didn't say a ton about JJ until they had the Akron game, and then I was like, okay, now we can talk about JJ like he's a demigod. But we didn't hear a lot about JJ in camp, and they in the spring because we got decent access to practices. We saw Devin getting some reps, and we're like, okay, and then not talked a lot about in preseason camp. And granted, the open practices we did see in preseason camp, they didn't have him out there a ton, especially with the ones. We kind of we got to the end of August here, and we're like, all right, Devin and Aaron Scott, they'll have their roles, and we'll see a lot of them against Grambling and Ohio, and it's like, oh wow, Devin Sanchez has a role on this team, and it's August 30th, and he's a freshman. That's really impressive. I'm excited to see what his role, because I think it's just going to grow and grow. But I will say, credit to Davison and Jermaine, the dime packages, and that might be where we see Devin, because it's going to be hard to take those two off the field too.
I think we might see Devin more going forward, because again, another major detail is JJ's playing Akron, Western Michigan bye week.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They could feature him significantly and ease him into it because the Oregon game wasn't until the middle of October. They didn't have to throw a true freshman out there and say, hey, go cover Ryan Wingo for 65 snaps. Good luck. They could say, hey, here's a role, be great in that role, master that role, and then when we can come up for air after this game, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of Devin. over the next 2 weeks. I'm sure of it. But you can't put most coaches will say you can't put a freshman in a situation where they might make a mistake because then it might live with them for the rest of their career, and they never really overcome it because they're young and they've never been in that position before. So I thought that was the perfect way to use Devin Sanchez for week 1.
My quick mark it down is that I think Devin's going to have a pick some point before the Washington game. So these next 2 games, he's going to get a pick against someone.
And I think
you might as well him and Aaron Scott. You might as well run them out there a lot over the next 2 games.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Just real quick, like I know we want to get to the offense. Like we talked about Jermaine and Davison having really, really strong games, and then Lorenzo Styles was obviously in the mix, and then oh wow, look at Devin Sanchez. Hey, Devin Sanchez is on the field, and the fourth corner is a 5-star second-year player who was riding the Pine Pony today, and that he's just a depth player on this team, and I don't think that says anything about Aaron Scott. I don't think that means Aaron Scott, he's got to get better. He's not this, he's not that. I just think Ohio State might be that deep and that good at corner to where you can say, hey, Mr. 5-star from Ohio who's got great length and size and is physical and athletic, you can't see the field because we've got this ahead of you. It's like preposterous. Like it is pretty like the top 4 really at corner, you're pretty much in a similar conversation as you are with the receivers.
Yeah, but we also, again, this was just trying to get through this game.
Sure.
I'm
not saying they should have played him.
No, I'm saying they did what they needed to do to get through this game, and it's clear that week 1, Devin was more ready than Aaron. Yeah. There's context behind all that stuff. Aaron's going to be very talented. He's a 5-star recruit. There's going to be a lot of covering in this game. That's not all corners do, but it is the thing that, in layman's terms, it's their most important job here. And one's a 5-star from Texas, and one's a 5-star from Southern Ohio. Right? Devin Sanchez has been going up against Ryan Wingo his entire life, and all types of Ryan Wingos his entire life because he's from Texas, and he went to North Shore, which plays an elite schedule. It's one of the best high school football programs in the state of Texas. So I don't think this was a crazy jump for him. It was crazy because it was the first week of the season, but it's not crazy in terms of, hey, can you go cover a 5-star? Sure, I'm a 5-star from a state with a lot of 5-stars. I've been playing against 5-stars my entire life. Aaron Scott probably has a larger learning. You know what it is? It's Julian Fleming and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And Julian injuries got in the way of all that. But Julian, one's a 5-star recruit from Philadelphia. The other one's a 5-star from Texas. So the fact that the 5-star from Texas was ready before the 5-star from a small town in Pennsylvania, was ready, not that shocking. Aaron Scott, I'm sure, is going to have a role on this team. This was more about whatever we got to do to get through week 1, and then we can come up for air. We could do that. And now we can spend 2 weeks throwing Devin and Aaron to the wolves and letting them get the necessary experience because Davis and Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews need that. Anonymous is saying Jalen McClain flash today. Jalen McClain, I'm sold. That's a dude. That's a dude.
Yeah.
That's a dude, man.
There was one play, a short yardage situation where Texas ran the ball, and I think they got the first down, but Jalen McClain was like on the right side of the line and ran like behind the entire offensive line to the left side. I think was part of the tackle. Like he's got great speed. I'm excited to watch him.
Oh my God. Getting to step in that Nebraska game last year has done wonders for his career here. Okay. Transitioning to offense. I'm trying to figure out how much of what we saw today from Ohio State is alarming first game stuff that you just got to work out versus it doesn't matter. Let's just throw the tape away and let's start anew next Saturday because they just had to do what they needed to do to get through this game. Ryan Day didn't seem to have a problem with the play calling from Brian Hartline today. In fact, even the way he talked about Julian was, you don't want to put too much on him. And then in hindsight, we probably could have put more on his plate. But I guess I'd rather that than the other way around. I'd rather get to the end of the game and the coach feel like they could have given their quarterback more than, oh, man, we gave him too much. Because if they would have given him too much, well,
and he crumbles.
He'd be Arch Manning right now. He'd be Arch Manning. So I think the worst part of this game was the receivers, which is like, all right, cool. That's the worst part of your game. We might have a super team on your hands. So what can we take from this offense that we can start to use as we formulate a conversation about what the identity of this team is going to be?
So the number one thing that I am walking away from the offense, like besides, because I think the Sayin conversation is an aggressive conservative conversation.
Yes.
Right. Like it is a, here's what happened, blah, blah, blah. Now, I think nobody really expects this. It is a problem if you get a couple of weeks down the line and you're still doing this because you don't trust your quarterback. I don't think you're going to get there with Julian Sayin. I don't think you're going to be in that spot again. And you would think and probably hope that Ohio State learned its lesson from the Michigan game, because I mean, the last 2 times they've been in the horseshoe, they scored, what was it, 10 and 14 points. And today just felt a little bit different. Not just,
I mean, they had a 40-point game in the middle of that.
That's right. They did have the last regular season game. Pardon me. The last regular season game they played in the shoe. The number one thing, frankly, that I'm taking from today that like I think is repeatable and not really subject to change, because I do think you're going to start to see Ohio State open it up a little bit. Question for you guys. Do you know what the number 6 today represents?
Devin Sanchez playing in the dime spot.
It's at the top of your screen.
It's at the top of your screen. No, that represents the number of tackles combined between Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke. Do you know what the number? This one's a much easier question. Do you know what the number 0 represents today?
Sonny Styles smacking a Texas. It's how many sacks in
football. Sarcastic. Ohio State gave up 0 sacks. Ohio State,
I know, right?
Going up against Colin Simmons, who has an award that says he was the 2024 Freshman of the Year.
A trophy's at the wrong address.
I think some people would maybe
say some. You don't have to do that. Yeah, we watched what that man from
he should have checked the bag in Austin and had that trophy on his way up to hand it off to the guy who should have got it.
So Colin Simmons, I think, by all measures, is a really good football player. And Colin Simmons, whether or not he deserved the Freshman of the Year award last year, still a good football player. Still somebody that a lot of people think is going to be a first-round pick one day.
There's good football players, and then there's I'm the best player in college football.
That's fine, but that he can be one of the best players in college football. And I think a lot of people thought he was. People talk about Ethan Burke, and I was kind of hyping him up before the game because everything you read about Texas is like, people saying, oh, this guy might be a first-round pick, and this guy's really long, and he's physical, and he's aggressive. And Ohio State started a left tackle who never thought he was going to play tackle at Ohio State, who rotated at guard last year, who we weren't sure was going to be a starter 6 months ago, and he was their left tackle. And Phillip Daniels was a Minnesota transfer who started at right tackle. And we weren't sure he was going to be a starter, I don't know, a month ago. And they gave up 0 sacks. The most memorable thing that Colin Simmons did today was try to decapitate Phillip Daniels because he ripped his helmet off and it was a penalty on Texas, which I think canceled out a 3rd down stop for the Longhorns. I would have to go back and look at that. But like, I understand that you can probably pick nits and say that, hey, the run game needs to be a little bit better. All right, sure. James Peoples only had 2 yards to carry. I think CJ Donaldson, he only had like 3.5 or something like that. Okay, the run game, the offensive line, maybe got to pick that up. The tackles today were unbelievable, I thought. That to me is replicable from what you're going to see today, that you can expect to see in a month, in 3 months, in the playoffs. Austin Sareveld and Phillip Daniels, Good job. Like, they were awesome today against a very, very ferocious front. And frankly, you look at the schedule and what it's going to bring. Like, denying Dennis Sutton's a good football player, but like these two might be two of the top 5 edge rushers, two of the top 4 edge rushers they're going to see all year. And they just so happen to play on the same team. And they got absolutely strapped up by Ohio State's tackles. A plus, 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 plus for Austin Cerville and Philip Daniels in the pass blocking department.
So I think 2 things. Yeah, Austin, heck of a job.
Yeah, really great.
I mean, yeah, heck of a job. A heck of a job by Philip Daniels. Also, again, I was never worried about pass pro. The last time Ohio State's pass protection just got ransacked was 2021 when Aiden Hutchinson was out there. So in terms of the offensive line, the issue hasn't been pass pro. Ohio State quarterbacks don't get sacked. It's the run blocking, which takes time. I get that. That's a season-long journey for Ohio State right now. James Peoples didn't look great. I just don't think he sees the hole very well all the time. No, granted, I think Texas is a very good run defense, so you have to give them some credit as well. But I just don't think he was putting his foot in the ground and seeing the hole and running through it. Which was something Travion had an issue with early on in his career, and that'll take time. Again, this is James Peoples' first time in that moment. This is not C.J. Donaldson's first time in that moment. He's played in big games before, and so 19 carries for 67 yards the hard way and the touchdown. I think he's their number 1 back, and I think this is Stefan what the split is going to probably be 2-1. And that's probably right. It puts James in a situation where once things get clicking, he's the explosive back of the 2, while CJ is the guy where if you got to give somebody the ball 20 times, it's going to be, which is what Travion and Quinshon were last year. They were just, I think, closer in experience and talent level. And I'm not sure that these two are there right now. They can get there. We didn't see Bo Jackson. I'm sure we'll see him over the next couple of weeks here. But I am operating in a world where CJ Donaldson's probably their number 1 back until further notice. And that's not a negative. It's just kind of, what does this team need? And there's going to be some more games on the schedule where they need a dude who can carry it 15 to 20 times and just keep the offense on schedule.
Yeah, I think we were definitely surprised when we saw CJ get the start at running back. I think we all kind of assumed it was going to be James. I think when we did our predictions for the starting 22, we all said James Peoples. I guess let this be a cautionary tale. We had said multiple times this offseason when we were looking at the Vegas betting lines for Heisman, and it was like JJ, Julian Sayin, and then it was like CJ Donaldson, like in next in terms of Ohio State players. And we were like, what, like, why is CJ Donaldson got better odds than James Peoples? Like Vegas is like whoever's setting these lines, like what are you talking about? Vegas is always right. Vegas knew that CJ Donaldson would be the starting running back for Ohio State. So if you ever think Vegas is wrong, no. I mean, Vegas is never wrong.
I mean, to be fair, what was that Friday night when Texas started being the favorite in this game? Texas is always where the money is.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to put it.
I still think that people from Texas flew into Ohio and were able to use DraftKings, so they started betting on their team.
I think that's exactly what happened. It's like, wait, we can bet in this state? Let's
like,
go.
When money on Texas. It's like, yeah, well, there's a lot of people who just flew from Dallas, Houston, and Austin to Columbus, Ohio. So maybe there's some movement there in the lines.
They just left a red state and joined a swing state. Of course, they can bet now. I have a question about guard. And I can't wait to rewatch this game and just rewatch all the snaps when they were running the ball and Ethan Inyawa was in the game versus all the snaps and they were running the ball with Tegra Shapola in the game. Stefan, you were on it talking about the rotation's probably going to be with Tegra on the inside because instead of playing him 67 snaps, what if you played him 33? What would happen? I was asking people on the beat the entire pregame, hey, how many snaps if he's going to play? If Philip Daniels is starting for sure, which we knew before Pete Thamel even reported that was probably going to happen. Ryan had hinted at stuff for weeks. How many snaps does Ethan Inyawa play? Is it more like he's the tackle eligible guy, or is this legitimately a rotation? They rotated. So again, Andrew, you continue to be wrong about rotating on the offensive line. It continues to work for this team. I have a hot take. Ethan Inyawa will be this team's starting right guard by the time they play Washington.
Oh, wow, that's quick. I thought you were going to say by the playoff.
I thought about saying Penn State. but I think he'll start against Washington. I think he will take all of the snaps by the Penn State game. That worked today. I thought some of their stronger runs came when he was in there at right guard. And it's nothing against Taylor. It's more about – it's like the Aaron Scott, Devin Sanchez conversation. It's not about the one guy ahead of him is playing bad. It's that the guy who isn't the starter right now is playing well. And you got to go with who is playing well. And I think by the end of this season, or even midway, by the time they start Big Ten play, their best offensive line unit is going to be Austin Saravel, Luke Montgomery, who him and Carson Hinsman had a double team in this game that worked out so well that the defensive tackle lost his shoe, and they drove him back like 4 yards. Ethan and Yawa, Phillip Daniels.
I could see it. I wish PFF had the snap numbers up yet. They don't have it yet.
Yeah, hurry up, PFF.
So I'm sure on Monday's podcast we'll talk a bit about that, Stephen. I thought Ethan Oyama looked great. I thought he looked fantastic, and like I'm with you. I could definitely see that happening. But like that rotation with Tegra, man, it won you a national title, and it worked in game 1 against Texas. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I don't like how we can't really nitpick things like that because it should be a nitpick. Andrew should be right about that, but he's not because, of course.
Look, if we get to a point like there's a chance that we watch the game back and we get through like Grambling in Ohio and we're like, man, Anyan was just better than Shabola. And Anyan was just somebody that when you pair him with Phillip Daniels, that might be that.
But did you think Tegra? I didn't think Tegra struggled.
I didn't think Tegra struggled.
No, this is not a Tegra looked awful and Ethan looked serviceable. Right. This was it was fine, and then they started moving people in the run game.
There was not a player on the offense, like the offensive line, or really even the team as a whole, where you were like, got to get him off the field. Like gotta get him out. Gotta get rid of him. Gotta demote him. Like there really wasn't any of that.
Everything's a place. Well, the only place that wasn't a strength today for Ohio State until the final punt was the special. We got to come on. This can't keep being an issue every year. At some point, it would be nice to see Ohio State come into the season with special teams automatic because Texas special teams was on it. And we're talking about the offense and how conservative they were being. And some of that was because they have a young quarterback who they're not trying to put in a bad place. And then they finally did. But some of that was also because they started some drives. They started one drive on like the 1 yard line because of a goal line stand. They had another drive that started on an 8 yard line, another drive that started on a 4 yard line. They called a timeout and put themselves in a position to be aggressive in a 2-minute drill. Well, at that point, it was like a 47-second drill, but still, they were going to be aggressive. And then Texas let off a really good punt, and it's like, okay, it's the 4 yard line. You can't do anything there. So they kneeled it out. Ohio State didn't have a lot of favorable field position, but because some of the punting wasn't consistent today, Texas actually had some real good field position, and Ohio State's defense was just good enough for it to not matter.
Yeah, the punting. I kind of hope we see a little McClarty against Grambling and Ohio. Maybe. Yeah. Well, actually, that would assume that they're going to punt a good amount against Grambling, Ohio. So maybe that was a bad example. I guess that's punting is maybe one position where you don't.
What if they do it? What if they do it anyway? Just punt anyway, just for the sake of working
purposely. Yeah, I don't know. Then that punt at the end of the game was pretty good. So. I think one more thing, I guess I want to say, just kind of big picture about this game. The huge representation from the NFL. I counted 22 teams credentialed, or at least like assigned seats in the press box. You know, the Bengals had, or the Browns had ownership and general manager there. I saw the Bears had their GM there. Like there was a good representation by the NFL, obviously, and I think like. Your initial reaction is, people there to watch Arch. It's beyond that, right? There's 22 teams. That, some of them are going to have to decide if they want JJ, if they want Colin Simmons, stuff like that. But it's like you could argue that like three players who really didn't make any noise in this game were Colin Simmons, Jeremiah Smith, and Arch Manning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like those GMs didn't watch the game just because the guys that they were there for didn't play well. So like for a guy like Davison or a guy like Jermaine, it's like you might have just gotten on some dudes' radars. For a guy like Arvel Reese, like you might have gotten on some dudes' radars. Like Austin Saraville, like that was a huge opportunity for a lot of these guys on that stage against that team. You're going to catch some eyes from NFL scouts and things of that nature, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool when the non-stars step up in situations and like I don't know down the road. What if there's a GM or a scout where this game by Jermaine just doesn't leave his head, and like this could be a game that changes Jermaine Matthews' life. Like I think that's a pretty cool like underlying storyline in all this.
I think it was funny, like you said, you looked at that and it was like I had a buddy text me and he was like, "What the hell are the other 10 teams doing? Why aren't they there?" It's a fair point.
The other 10 teams are teams who have franchise quarterbacks already.
Right. Yeah. But it's like, but I guess that goes into the point that Stefan's making though, because I mean, if you were to rank who had the best day for Ohio State, for like 10 names, who had the best day for Texas, like Arvel Reese probably on that list. He's a draft eligible player now. For as little as he has played, he is draft eligible. Jermaine Matthews is draft eligible now. And Carnell Tate, he's not the number one receiver on their team. He's a draft eligible third-year player, and he's probably a first-round pick. The offensive line we've said looked good. Saraville, I believe, is draft eligible now. Like all these guys were like talking about as NFL draft prospects. Where is Jeremiah going to go? Could he be the first non-quarterback since blank? Could he be the first receiver since blank? Caleb, where could he go? And Ohio State had a lot of dudes that they basically had like a little bit of inverse Denzel Burke from Oregon, where it was like we looked at Denzel and that's not a great game for Denzel. He might have lost a lot of money here. There were a lot of dudes who may have made themselves some coin today.
My internet started being spotty when you talked about Arvel Reese not coming back for another year, so I don't entertain those prospects.
I think you just blacked out and passed out for a minute, and you just started to get a little woozy. You just heard Arvel Reese, and you just drifted off to sleep.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Biggest takeaway from this game, and the thing you're most interested in learning about this team over the next 2 weeks. Stefan, you first.
My biggest takeaway is kind of a big picture one. Like, we've talked so much about Ohio State and this, the Athletic was labeled them as recession proof, and they just don't have the lows that even programs like Alabama and Texas and Georgia and whoever have had last 50 years, Michigan have had the last 50 years. And Jimmy, our columnist, and I were talking about this on our walk back to the car with you too, Stephen. I'm just like, Ryan Day's stepped in, and say what you will about the born on third base and all that stuff, and it's like he's got Ohio State in a spot where it's like, dude, they just beat top 5 Indiana, lost to Michigan. That is the one thing that he's still got to get figured out. Mm-hmm. And then went on a playoff run where they beat top 10 Tennessee, number 1 Oregon. Ryan Day's 2-0 against number 1 teams, and both games have been in like the last 8 months.
Yeah.
Number 1 Oregon, top 5 Texas team, and a top 5 Notre Dame team, or top 10 Notre Dame team, whatever they were. And then came back and beat the number 1 team in the country. And it's like he has this program in such a healthy place right now in a time where there's so much change and so many coaches are trying to figure things out. And like, and even Ohio State, like when NIL first started getting rolled out, Stephen, like you were here, we talked about it a lot. Like Ohio State was kind of behind the 8 ball and like playing some catch up, but now they're like, now when we talk about revenue sharing, it's like, are they going to be behind the 8 ball because it's unclear how rules are going to be enforced and all this and that. It's like, you put all it aside, it's like these teams are so talented that he's got here. And he just lost 14 draft picks and 16 players overall that had chances of making an NFL roster this offseason. And Josh Fryer ended up making the 53-man roster for the Cardinals. He wasn't drafted. Seth McLaughlin if it not for an injury, I think he probably would have been drafted. So like we're talking about 16 dudes here who have real NFL hopes are gone. And we're 1 week into the season. We're like, oh yeah, they're going to be really good. And they're going to be right in the mix to win a national title again this year. And it's just at this point where you look at the games against Grambling and Ohio coming up. I don't say this lightly because I think it's true. If Ohio State were to ever lose a game to a team like a Grambling or Ohio, it would be the biggest upset in college football history at this point. Where Ryan Day has the program right now, it would be the biggest upset ever. And that's I know that sounds like a low bar, like, okay, yeah, they're favored by a lot to beat Grambling State or Ohio. But it's like, it's just at that point where like, this is a machine that Ryan Day has going. And today I think was a reminder of that, of like all these questions in the offseason. It's like, here's number 1 Texas. Okay. 14-7 win. We played a certain way because this game happened to be in week 1. So we had to play this way to win. Okay, now we can get back to being ourselves and like start rolling. Like that's just, they changed like the way they called the game because it's what dictated. And they're like, all right, because this game is week 1 and we have a young quarterback, we just have to do it like that. Oh, and we're gonna win while we do it. Like it's just crazy to think about it. So it's like a big picture takeaway of like the program is in a very healthy spot. It's in a very healthy spot. What I want to see is I want to see Julian saying rip it. Like I want to see these next 2 games. Steven, you had set the number like you want to see 70 passes over the next 2 weeks. Like, yeah. Like run up the score. Like what? Like it's not about like Ohio State's not going to run up the score to like disrespect its opponent. It's that you have a lot of new that you're still trying to learn exactly how it fits certain places. Like these are your preseason games now. You get 2 preseason games and a bye week to get everything figured out, or as much figured out as you can, and start Big Ten play because that's going to be a tough game at Washington week. I guess that's technically week 5, their 4th game of the season. Like, I want to see Julian now, like, really command what is the Ryan Day offense, right? Like, I want to see the Ryan Day offense now in full effect with Julian saying. I think we saw a version of Ohio State's offense that needed to be that way to beat Texas week 1 with how that game ended up going today. But now I want to see how Julian saying fits in this grand scheme of Ryan Day's offense and Brian Hartline's offense. And I think letting it rip the next couple of weeks is going to be huge.
Gillis?
Yeah, I think what I want to see is I want to see how this defense continues to evolve and grow. I'm curious what Patricia kind of has cooked up because I think you could convince me that anytime you play a big time opponent, this is it. Because how many teams are going to go toe for toe for you talent wise? And again, in big time games like this, you probably trust your offense, especially as Sayin gets better and this offense continues to build and grow. You probably trust your offense a little bit to go out there and score some points, right? Like you trust your offense to kind of cook a little bit. So I'm curious to see what Patricia can get rolling here. My overall big kind of takeaway, we've been on this show and somebody's been kind of letting us know what's going on in Tallahassee right now.
Oh, I have it. Tallahassee is about to run through.
I have it up on my phone and I have been glancing down every once in a while. And, you know, as we record this, Florida State is running out the clock on Bama. So Bama's going to lose. And
good loss. That's a good loss for Bama.
Right. Yeah, tough loss
conversation.
Oh, Ryan
on the
Williams
road against Florida State.
Ryan,
best 0-1 resume in college football. That's
Ryan
not true. Texas has the best 0-1 resume in college football, but
Ryan, no, well, maybe. Ryan Williams went down when it was 14, when they were down by 14 points. So obviously, you know, you have to weigh that into their loss. That was too sarcastic, but I wonder with this Ohio State team if we get to the same kind of idea that we had last year of like, maybe this is just the best team in college football and it's up to them not to beat themselves. Because we talk about the Oregon game and they lost 32-31. And look, Oregon was a dang good football team. I don't want to take anything away from them. I know they got housed in the Rose Bowl. But Oregon was really good. They did win the Big Ten. They did beat everybody else on their schedule. They were good. And then they just shot themselves in the foot against Michigan in every which way possible. And then I think it was like midway through the first or second quarter. I think it was probably the second quarter at the Rose Bowl when we were all in Pasadena. We just had this like air of inevitability when we were talking about Ohio State. We were like, they're going to win the national championship, right? Like it reached that point, and it was kind of like, oh, they've become self-actualized, and that was kind of the point of Ohio State. Really, like they figured out who they were and they figured out what they needed to do, and they just finally started playing like everybody knew they could. And I wonder if we're going to get there. Now, is that a crazy takeaway 6 hours into the season, 7 hours into the week one? Probably, maybe. But Bama just went down on the road to Florida State, to what somebody just said, a team that went 2-10 last year. Even if Florida State is a lot better this year and last year was just a mess for them, like that's not great. And then like Bama goes down, you just beat Texas in a game where I think Ohio State very clearly kind of put a restrictor plate on their offense in terms of the speed. Like there's going to be more games. Clemson plays LSU right after this when we're done recording. Notre Dame plays Miami tomorrow. Oregon didn't play anybody today. Penn State doesn't play anybody for a month. There's going to be other big games, but they just knocked off probably a top 4, top 5 team in college football, I would say. Texas is. And I just wonder if we're going to get to that point where we go, you know what? They are the best team in college football. And if we see Ohio State play it to its full potential every game that they play, a repeat might feel inevitable at some point.
See, but I think the Florida State thing plays into Ohio State even more. Part of the reason why Florida State fell off a cliff last year is because they lost 10 players to the NFL draft from a team who would have been in the college football playoff had their quarterback not gotten hurt late in the season that year. That's a good excuse to fall off a cliff, right? Oh, wait, no, Ohio State lost 14 players to the NFL draft, and they just came out and beat the number 1 team in the country to start off their season. So maybe it's not that good of an excuse. I think my big takeaway is these two things. For starters, I think officially the Ohio State 2025 season can start. I think these are the last 7 games. Number 5, Indiana. The rivalry game. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 1, Oregon. Number 4, Texas. Number 3, Notre Dame. Number 1, Texas. And they went 6-1 with the one loss being to, of course, the only team on that list who's not in the top 10, but is also their rival. So they still got to fix that issue, but they can't fix that right now. I also think it's funny that Julian Sayin is the first quarterback to make his debut against a number 1 team to win that game since Jim Harbaugh did it at Michigan. You just can't escape these guys, man. You just can't escape them. But I think you can close that book. I think there were a lot of things, a lot of pageantry things that allowed you to close that book, whether it's the Lee Corso, the way they handled that. The banner went up today. A lot of those guys were in the building today to watch this game. And then you spent 9 months just trying to get through this game, and you got through this game, and now you can come up for air and actually start working towards trying to repeat. And so I just want to see what the real Ohio State is, because I don't think Saturday was the real Ohio State. I think this was we have to play the number 1 team in the country, so we just got to do whatever it takes to win this game, Ohio State. I think there are going to be a lot of things we see from the defense over the next 3 months. Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott, Malik Hartford, Peyton Pierce, Will Smith, Tywan Malone, Jarquez Carter, right? CJ, a lot of these guys, there's a lot of packages out there for Matt Patricia to build around this defense. And I just think he went with the ones that he thought would lead to success against Texas, and it did. So it's fine. I think Ohio State's offense just did what it needed to do to win while not putting their quarterbacks in harm's way, but also giving the opportunity for him to put the game away when the opportunity came, which is where that 40-yard touchdown pass to Carnell Tate comes into the equation there. But he didn't throw a lot of passes downfield outside of that. So yeah, this is it. This 9-month window we've been living in of high anxiety, high pressure football since Indiana came to Columbus the week before the Michigan game. It's over now. And now, as Ryan Day likes to say, we just got to get through this, and then we can come up for air after that. We can all take our breath and spend 2 weeks getting back to what we all love to do, whether you're a fan of Ohio State or you cover it like we do, and that's taking a 40-point loss and finding a way to overreact about it, baby. 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. I'm telling you, great time to sign up for the text. Great time to sign up for the text. 2 games. We're going to be getting a lot of insight, and we text a lot. Also, as we're wrapping up this pod, Alabama just lost to Florida State on the road, 31-17. I can't wait to watch ESPN on Monday. I cannot wait to watch ESPN on Monday because I wrote this about a week and a half ago. The Big Ten and the SEC play each other 3 times this year. It was supposed to be 4, but the Georgia and UCLA game got canceled. It's Ohio State, Texas this week. It's Oklahoma, Michigan next week. And then in a few weeks, the game is Alabama and Wisconsin. Alabama doesn't scare me anymore. So, hey, Luke. Hey, Luke Fickle.
Did you watch Wisconsin's opener?
That's not what we're talking about right now. Hey, Luke Fickle. Can you make some magic happen? Because if Bryce Underwood goes into Oklahoma next week and wins that game, oh, buddy, oh, buddy, oh, buddy, oh, buddy, oh, pal, we're going to be having a different conversation about strength of schedule. The Big Ten might get more playoff teams in again this year, just like they did last year. I can't wait, baby. Monday's going to be fun. Stefan and I are going to rewatch this game a million times over and try to break it down the best we can and try to see what we can take that we can apply to the games that are coming up in the future, what we can't apply, and just kind of break it down piece by piece because this is still an important game and we still want to give it the justice it is. We just thought it was important to go an hour and 15 minutes today and go live. Thank you to everybody who stuck with us for the live. We're going to try to do these a little bit more often, especially in post-game situations, because apparently Ohio State's only allowed to play at noon. If they ever play a game not at noon, we'll probably do a pre-game live more than a post-game live, unless they play a big game at noon. But we're just trying stuff out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it if you watched live. If you didn't, it'll be in your podcast feeds. I mean, you know that because you're listening to this right now. But either way, get the text. 614-350-3315 at the 2-week. And if you're watching on live, I think you can click this link down here and it'll take you into a way that you can sign up for the text. If you're not, we're new to this, man. I don't know. Listen, we're all doing this on the fly. I'm Julian Sayin. They're trying to not have me make too many plays in week 1. Okay. We're just trying to get the win. Hopefully we got the win. Thank you for sticking with us. Ohio State 14-7 overall. Texas to be the number 1 team in the country to start the season 1-0. That streak of starting seasons 1-0 dates back to 1999. That's the last time they lost their season opener. That was to Miami. Every year since the turn of the millennium, they have been winning their first game. That continues this year. They're 1-0. I expect for them to be number 1 in the preseason, and not the preseason, but the AP poll rankings when those come back on Tuesday, I think, Stefan, because it's Labor Day weekend.
That's right. Yeah, because they're UNC and TCU play on Monday.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, happy Labor Day. Enjoy your day off. The team you root for is 1-0 with a win over the SEC, who was the number 1 team in the country. Can't wait to see what happens next week. For Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.